All right, Tuesday, February 20th. It feels like it's almost March. Today we have Steve Greenfield on with us today, talking about the government being a little less electric, triple incentives, and the end of free shipping. Maybe? I don't think it'll be the end. Steve, good morning. Thanks for joining us today.
Paul, always nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great. Hey, I just want to let everybody know before we get into the show that tomorrow we are hosting our next ASOTU Edge webinar. It is a quick shot webinar. That's how we do them, 25 minutes-ish. It feels a lot more like a conversation. We're going to be with our friends at Upstart Auto Retail. They're going to be sharing the results of a 100 dealer survey that they recently did. So Keyshawn Batts, head of customer success, is going to take us through the insights, and we're going to answer some questions, have a little bit of fun. So you can go to asotu.com, just scroll up a little bit, and you'll see that you can sign up for that webinar for free, have you in and out, and learn a little something along the way. So that's where we're going to go. But Steve, you have places to be today, and so we're just going to try to get right into the news. But I want to ask you first, it's been a while. Actually, we haven't seen... Did we see each other at NADA? I can't ever remember.
I don't even think I saw you guys there.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I'm just realizing.
It was a blur. Yeah.
I told everybody I feel like I missed the show.
Right. Yeah.
I missed the show because we were running around so much. But what was your highlight takeaway from NADA?
It was great. I mean, I think dealers are still very optimistic. I mean, it's still going to be a really good year. Probably not quite as much from a profitability standpoint, but I think dealers are very optimistic and very positive. And I think the amazing thing, Paul, I've talked about this, is like, I felt like during COVID, the franchise dealer model was under attack, right, from various angles. And I think if anything, it's just amazing after 25 years in this industry to just continue to see how durable and defensible the franchise dealer model is. And now we're seeing VinFast and Fisker and others saying, we were going to sell directly, but we've reconsidered. We're going to actually resell cars through dealers. And it's a testament, like this model works. It's been proven to work for 100 years or more, and it will continue to work. So we never want to rest on our laurels and stick our head under the sand, right? To mix my metaphors. But at the same time, it's amazing. If ever there was going to be an attack on the franchise model, it was through OEMs and direct selling during COVID. And, I think that dealers, rightfully so, feel pretty confident now that they have the right model. It's a very profitable, durable, defensible model.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's good news for everybody, but I think it's insightful and true. I just imagine, like, every time the ball gets hit over the net, the dealership model just smacks it back across. Right. I think of some of the challenges that a lot of companies had keeping like employees in the building, keeping employees engaged, hiring the right people, and we didn't have that issue at all in automotive.
Right.
Like at all.
Very true. Very, very true. Yeah. If anything, the opposite, right? Everything before COVID was all around turnover and retention, et cetera. Right. And, at this point, I think partially thanks to what you guys are doing, brick by brick, you're laying the foundation to ensure that, a future generation of employee knows that this is actually a really good industry to get your teeth cut in. And there are all kinds of upside opportunities in this industry.
I think it's a place too. I'm reading a book right now called Full Time by an economist named David Bahnsen. And he talks about the declining participation rate in the workforce. And he ties that directly to people feeling a sense of purpose and meaning in work. And I think in automotive, like, again, what we're trying to do with More Than Cars is to like just provide people a pathway to find more meaning in what they do. And I think the automotive industry is just such a clear place that you can bring meaning and value into people's lives that work at dealerships and in the products and services you offer and sell. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to just dismiss the industry and say, all we're doing is selling cars, right? Or all we're doing is servicing cars. But you think about, people need transportation to go to work, to feed their families. And this is why this business model is so essential to the U.S. economy, but also it's just so defensible because people need transportation to live. And we're providing that as an industry. So it's very important. And if people realize that, they can align with that and feel a great sense of purpose in their day-to-day work.
Full agree. Well, let's talk about how we're going to deliver that transportation, what it even looks like. It's looking like 2030 might not be as electric as the government once said, as the Biden administration is planning to relax its ambitious EV transition goals. And here's why the pace is slowing down. So the EPA is going to reduce the speed of proposed yearly emissions requirements through 2030, making EVs now having to require less or occupy less than 60% of total production, as opposed to their initial higher target, which was a little later, 67% by 2032. So it's not really an apples to apples, according to the article. Automakers, dealers, even get this, we're partnering up now with the UAW to argue that EV technology costs and infrastructure development need some more time, prompting the reevaluation. John Bozzella of the Alliance for Automotive Innovation is emphasizing the importance of allowing the market, supply chains, and public charging infrastructure to develop to support the EV shift. And they propose 40 to 50% by 2030 might be even like more realistic according to demand and infrastructure. We have to mention that current production sits at about 8%. So there's a long way to go between 8% and 60%. What is your feeling on this and just generally the sentiment and market dynamics?
Well, look, I mean, it's tough being a politician and say that in an election year is a lot, but trying to anticipate what consumer demand is actually going to be
Mhm.
with what is right for the environment, because there's a lot of debate around that. Then you've got, the Chinese element with, most of the minerals are coming out of China for the foreseeable future overall, and you're trying to navigate all of this. And it'd be great to wave a magic wand and say we're going to go 100% to electric, and everyone will be happy. The consumer will be happy. We'll have independence from China. Both political parties will be happy, et cetera. But as dealers have written to Biden, the demand just isn't there. As you said, we're hovering around 8%, and it's not growing too much. The pace of acceleration of growth is slowing down. And the U.S. government, I think, is looking at this and saying, okay, well, while it might be nice to flip over from ICE vehicles to EV, it's just like it's not that easy a path. So they're
Mhm.
backing off, and we'll see how much they back off this year. The big unknown is, it being an election year. What happens right after November,
Right.
depending on who's in the White House, and does the IRA actually withstand that, or does it start to get dismantled? And without consumer-facing tax credits, I do wonder what natural demand is for EVs.
There's in your weekly insights report, if you don't get it, go to automotiveventures.com and you should be on this email list. It's a great just digest of all the things going on in the industry. You posted two articles in there. One is about EV incentives, new EV incentives tripling in some cases. So is this just an indicator that like consumers don't really want the EVs, and so manufacturers are just trying to respond in kind?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I was sitting at NAD at a dinner with a BMW store out near San Francisco, and he sells 40% of new BMWs at his store are EVs.
Mm,
Yet he said, I can't make any front end gross on them. I was like, that's kind of interesting. So let me reconcile that. So for you have demand for EVs in your local market. He said, yes, but you can't make any profit on them. He said, no, I can't make any front end gross already on EVs despite the demand. And I think that's only going to get worse, right? So what we're seeing is just an oversupply situation. There will be more EVs. There already are. You look at day supply. There are more EVs on the lot than demand. That's going to get worse because a lot of these legacy automakers are building new models of EVs, and they've already pre-committed to those volumes. So we're going to see a oversupply situation that grows over the course of the year. And those incentives, which now, yeah, they've tripled, are just going to get higher. It's going to be a really good time to buy an EV if you're a consumer.
mhm.
But I think it's going to be really challenging for dealers because they're going to start looking for OEM support to say, look, what are you doing? We see already that there's the 60% lease penetration on EVs. So 60% of all EVs that are non-Teslas are being leased right now because of the loophole in the IRA.
Mhm.
So can all of those cars get the $7,500 tax incentive? But I think it's going to be tough to sell despite that because we're going to continue to be oversupplied this year.
It's interesting. You also posted another article in that insights report that talks about even California's EV sales dropped substantially in Q4. And that's the first time EV sales have dropped in California in a decade, or probably since the modern EV era. That's just seems like a further indication that like everything's slowing down. Interesting that the BMW dealer, 40% of their new car sales are EVs. That's really surprising to me. I didn't expect it. I mean, I guess BMW a smaller brand that's been able to lean in heavier. But even so, that's very surprising. 40%.
Yeah, it's very, very surprising. And if you talk to Mercedes-Benz and BMW dealers, even in softer EV markets, they're still getting forced to take EV inventory, even if there isn't demand. So it's going to be an interesting year. I'm not going to say ugly yet. I might say ugly by halfway through the year,
Right.
but it's going to be an interesting year because inventories will mount. We know that. The dealers are going to say, like, give me some relief. And the OEMs are going to have to come in over the top with increasing incentives. And we're going to see like significant incentives for some of these EV models.
It's unbelievable to me how difficult it is to find news in the auto industry because, you and I every morning, we scour the news, we look at a bunch of different sources, not just auto stuff, but all the other stuff. And it is near impossible to find 1 in 10 articles that isn't about EV.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's amazing, the articles that I clip every week. I'm amazed at how often now these dynamics, both EVs and also the threat of Chinese, is in like
yes,
big newspapers outside of auto, like New York Times, Washington
absolutely.
Post,
Reuters. Yeah.
LA Times, Reuters, Bloomberg. I mean, they're all covering this stuff now because you can't get away from it. The average person on the street is reading this because no matter where they consume their news, they're getting this news and they're reading about EVs and the Chinese threat and all these dynamics that typically we would be pretty insulated reading ourselves. But the person on the street now, you get into an Uber and ask the Uber driver and they have an opinion because they've been reading the same news that we're reading.
It's funny that like the conversation about, Chinese EVs and this international trade and like the big threat, the crazy part about it is like, but it's a product that nobody wants right now. Right. And so it's like this massive hype machine and this like impending doom over something that consumers are like, we don't want to buy those. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out this year. But yes, it is definitely part of pop culture and kind of like everyday life for people who just read.
Well, Paul, the one caveat I would say is there isn't that much demand at the price point that we've seen, right? If we can get a sub $20,000 EV, I think we're going to see actually, you're going to unlock a whole different type of buyer. And, imagine those cars when they come back used and you can have a good quality used EV at 10 grand. I mean, we have yet to unlock that segment and it's uncertain. Nobody knows how big that segment's going to be, but I think we're about to see what the sort of $20,000 EV buyer demand is.
And it'll be, the infrastructure challenge is still, I mean, it'll just exacerbate if all of a sudden there's a sub $20,000 EV and people start saying, hey, this makes economically viable sense for me to buy this car, but overall cost of ownership or convenience of ownership isn't realized until after the purchase. I think we could be in for a real awakening if we get to the sub 20,000, see what the market is, and then see what the infrastructure can actually sustain.
Well, the other big news last week was, Stellantis was the last OEM to embrace the Tesla standard for EVs. And while they don't really have any EVs yet, they're going to have EVs. And, what we're going to see is we're going to see these Tesla supercharger stations overwhelmed with non-Tesla vehicles. And what's that going to do to the Tesla buyer's experience? They'll be like,
it's going to crush it.
Yeah. So is Tesla going to start charging more for non-Tesla vehicles? Probably. Could they throttle the speed of charging for non-Tesla buyers? I wouldn't put it past.
I mean, but I still don't think that that's going to help the Tesla experience. If all of a sudden that person's got to park there for an hour, I rented an EV when I was in Orlando last week, and it was the cheapest car to rent via Avis, $45 a day, and they ended up putting me in a Ford Mach-E, which I really enjoyed driving. I refuse to call it a Mustang because it's not. But I was at a Wawa convenience store and they have Tesla superchargers out back, and I didn't need to charge it, but I was like, you know what, maybe I'll just charge it to like get the experience. And then I was like, I'm not doing that. I don't have a Tesla. I'm not going to face the shame of going to the Tesla. It's like walking into the Apple store with an Android phone and asking for something. So I just decided not to do it instead.
Can you imagine the dirty looks you'd get?
Oh, it would have been terrible, especially as I was figuring out like, how do I pay for this? Because in a Tesla, it's just integrated with the app. You just pull up, plug it in, and you go. I have no idea how you charge a Ford at a Tesla station.
Agreed. Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks for being with us today. You have places to go. We have things to do. We're going to see you back on Thursday. Thanks for joining us again. But until then, get out there, serve some customers, love some people more than you love cars, and we'll see you here right tomorrow morning.
Thanks, Paul.